Good day to you, Guyana, and welcome to Facing the Nation. I am Malika Ramsey. Thank you very much for joining us this week. I trust that you all would have had a productive week. And of course, it's a new month, so I know you're looking forward to new things, more productive things in the new month. Well, today I am especially happy because I've been promising you for the last few weeks that the young man, as I describe him, the young man who more or less, in a sense, started off some of his public life journey right here on this program, Facing the Nation. I kept promising you that I would have him back one day, and it is my pleasure to say that we've finally been able to penetrate his very, very busy schedule. So I have with me on this program today the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, His Excellency Brigadier David Granger. Sir, it is my pleasure. I'm absolutely honored to welcome you back to Facing the Nation.
It's good to be back, Malika.
All
I'm
right,
glad
great.
I'm here.
All right, and I know that the viewers are extremely happy. Additional good news for you too is that I will open up the phone lines a little later on in the program. You can call in and pose your questions to the Brigadier. I, as usual, would love if you can stick to what we're talking about today, but I know some of you are going to defy me anyway. We're talking about His Excellency's recent visit overseas, and as you know, the President recently attended the United Nations Sustainable Development Summit 2015, the Global Leaders Meeting on Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment, and the 70th session of the General Assembly. Of course, that visit took place from the 23rd to the 29th of September 2015. Before the President and I have our discussion, the way that we would have done it in the past, of course, so this is just like old times. Before he does that, for those of you who have not yet gotten a chance to see or to listen to his address, the presentation that he made to the UN on the 29th of September, I'll give you a chance to look at that in this clip. And when we come back, we'll talk more about that same visit and a few other things. And of course, I'll open up the phone lines. This is Facing the Nation. Stay tuned.
Mr. President, distinguished heads of state and government, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, the Cooperative Republic of Guyana is honored to participate in the worldwide observance of the 70th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations. This event coincides happily with the adoption of a worldwide transformative 2030 agenda for sustainable development. These twin events provide the opportunity for us to reaffirm both our resolve to respect the founding principles of the United Nations and our commitment to the renewal of our promise to pursue development for all. We embark on this new agenda by building on the achievements and experiences of many countries across the globe, including my own, in implementing the Millennium Development Goals. We are conscious that in doing so, the imperatives of strong and effective monitoring, full integration of the economic, social, and environmental dimensions, and early and concrete actions to give effect to the Global Partnership for Development will be given particular relevance. Excellencies, Guyana is conscious of the fact that achieving the Sustainable Development Goals for all will require high levels of political commitment. This summit is only a start. We must continue to work with each other as states in the international community and to work together with our own people within our countries. Unity of effort is essential to confront the difficult but necessary choices which must be made to realize the goal of sustainable development. Vigilance will be required from us as leaders and from all stakeholders. A reformed and revitalized United Nations development system and intergovernmental machinery, including the Economic and Social Council and the high-level political forum, will be needed to exercise core functions in such a manner that will provide impetus, that will enable accountability, and that will actualize course correction. There must be policy integration to address competing priorities and demands. We count on the United Nations system for effective support and guidance in this regard. Excellencies, the Cooperative Republic of Guyana is of the view that the same spirit of understanding and cooperation that attended preparation of this agenda should mark its implementation. Success will require nothing less. We have laid the basis for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. The means of implementation outlined in that agenda, in conjunction with the provisions of the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, will be critical to the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals and targets. We recognize that all sources of financing will be required to contribute to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. All countries, developed and developing, will be required to play positive roles in accordance with their diverse circumstances, situations, and resources. Progress in implementing the Addis Ababa Action Agenda can provide a strong impetus to efforts to implement the 2030 Agenda. This is especially pertinent to such service deliverables as implementing a new global social compact for the delivery of social protection and essential public services for all, increasing international cooperation in tax matters, ensuring debt sustainability, intensifying efforts to end hunger and malnutrition, bridging the critical infrastructure gaps, operationalizing the technology facilitation mechanism, and employing the ECOSOC forum for the follow-up to financing for development. Guyana recognizes the links between peace, security, and the rule of law, and the successful implementation of this agenda. Guyana calls on all nations to eschew recourse to the threat or use of force in the resolution of international controversies. Guyana urges that friendship and understanding should underpin relations between states in consonance with the principles of international law and in a renewed spirit of global solidarity and partnership. Guyana at the national level is richer for the many lessons of our collective development experience, not least has been our long embrace of the primacy of the pursuit of a path of sustainable development, including the effective integration of its three dimensions at all levels. Guyana will work tirelessly in accordance with our national plans and aspirations to build a modern, peaceful, and prosperous nation in which all citizens share equally in the benefits of development. Guyana's policy is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and to promote opportunities for all. Education, which is Sustainable Development Goal number 4, is the mother of all goals. It is the gateway to reducing inequality. It is the gateway to empowering all women and girls. That is goal number 5. It will boost national efforts in the fight against poverty, goal number 1. Its achievement is necessary to end hunger. Guyana over the next 5 years will have as one of its foremost priorities of national development the provision of inclusive and equitable quality education and lifelong learning opportunities for all. Excellencies, it lies within our collective will to address the defining challenges of our time successfully. These challenges include eliminating trafficking in persons, eradicating poverty, promoting more inclusive, just, and peaceful societies, and combating climate change. We must harness the spirit of understanding and cooperation to assure the successful implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development within the next 15 years. The Cooperative Republic of Guyana declares today its full support for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We commit to work untiringly for its full realization. We are determined to achieve all the Sustainable Development Goals and their targets. The Sustainable Development Goals represent the finest aspirations of humanity. The world we want for future generations is within our grasp. In this great global family, the United Nations, no woman, no child, no one should be left behind. I thank you.
Thank you. I thank the President of the Republic of Guyana for his...
Thanks for staying with us. And those of you who are now joining us, of course, this is Facing the Nation. Today, I'm chatting with the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, His Excellency Brigadier David Granger. What you were viewing a few moments ago is the President's address on the Sustainable Development Goals. Of course, that was not the main address the President made, of course, where, he continues to champion Guyana's cause regarding Venezuela's claim to Guyana's territory. He'll be talking to you about that today right here on this program. But of course, eventually we will bring that to you for those of you who would have missed his main address, which was actually delivered on the 29th of September. Brigadier, as I did welcome you back earlier, even before we talked about, because it has been ventilated a whole lot in the local media, it is very important that this issue, the Venezuela's claim to Guyana's territory, it's important that it has been ventilated so much. But even before we deal with that today, let's talk about the clip that we just saw. You talked about the Sustainable Development Goals. How important are those goals for Guyana?
Well, we started at the United Nations with the Millennium Development Goals, and they set certain benchmarks which had to be achieved by 2015. Well, now it's 2015. So rather than stopping and standing still, the United Nations and the international community as a whole has moved forward by creating what they call Sustainable Development Goals. That is to say, we ought to have achieved the ordinary development goals in terms of education, health, and other public services. But now we're moving forward to 2030. So for the next 15 years, we'll be working to achieve these sustainable development goals. So they're very important because the general consensus is that the Millennium Development Goals were more or less effective. They have not been completely successful in all areas, but generally speaking, there was a surge in most countries towards the accomplishment of those goals, reducing child mortality, reducing poverty, but more has to be done. So the Sustainable Development Goals are really about doing more, and I would say they're important to all countries, particularly developing countries like Guyana. And that is why I was able to select one of those SDGs as what they call the mother of all SDGs.
And as we move on to the mother of all SDGs, what is the mother of all SDGs? And again, because in a sense you need all of Guyana to contribute, not only government, but how are we moving forward?
Well, what I selected was the SDG, which called for greater access to education. I call it the mother because you can't speak about alleviating poverty, you can't speak about providing greater employment unless people have the basic education. And I feel that education is going to free poor people from their poverty. If people are educated, it means that they'll be able to receive more education, more learning, more skills. Mm-hmm. They'll be able to create their own enterprises, and they'll be able to play their full roles in society as as employed people. Once they're marginalized, if they're unemployed, if they're too poor, even to go to school, they stand a very poor chance of ever getting full employment. Maybe at best they get menial employment, which is not likely to be satisfactory in terms of helping them to raise a family, get a house, a car, and live what I call the good life. So education will provide the skills to enable them to not only stay in school, but after school to become entrepreneurs, to go into business and get rich.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, and that's everyone's goals. This is apart from SDGs. Finally, before we move on from SDGs, sir, if I can just read from a part from a release that was sent out by our office. President Granger committed to ensuring that at the national level, all critical areas which require attention to foster equality between men and women, as well as the empowerment and advancement of women, will be accomplished. Now, sir, this is a very big one. In Guyana's context of equality, how will your government contribute to this?
Well, particularly in terms of women, we introduced in our National Assembly, as long as for the 3 years, something called State Paper on Equality of Women. It means that for over 4 decades, the Guyana has been working, laboring in the vineyard to ensure that women's equality is achieved. Equality is equality is equality. You know, it's not partial equality, it's not, you know, conditional equality, it is total equality. 5 men, 5 women, that's what it means. Now, it is a work in progress. Even though I said 42 years ago we introduced this state paper on women's equality, it has not been achieved. There has been a raft of legislation, you know, to prevent discrimination, to prevent abuse, to allow women to be given certain rights which they did not enjoy before. There is no shortage of legislation. But what I'd like to say is that there's been a shortage of achievement. We have to investigate why we have not achieved those targets. For example, the number of women in businesses, you know, the number of women in government positions. And if there's any impediment, we need to remove those impediments. You know, if, for example, there are too few women in science, we have to look at the school's curricula to see if there's any disincentive preventing women from going into science. So that is the way we intend to tackle it. We are now in what I call the investigative phase, but the objective will be over the next 5 years or so during the tenure of office of this APNU AFC administration to ensure that there is greater equality, the removal of inequalities. If you can define it like that, equality means the absence of inequality. It means that if a male can go, you know, into school and get the best science education, a female must be able to get it. Okay. If 2 people come for a job, male and female, the female mustn't be discriminated against. The female mustn't be made to be doing secretarial work while the man do a man's job, you know, that type of thing. It's old thinking. It has not gone away completely, but we are working on it. And let me add this, right? A few weeks ago, we had this round table on social cohesion. That is part of it too. Equality is an important element in social cohesion. This is not just a matter of ethnic cohesion, Africans and Indians. It's also a matter of geographical cohesion, coastland and hinterland, and also a matter of gender, that we must not discriminate against women, we must not discriminate against girl children.
Okay, sir, I must ask you this. Now, this is not necessarily my sentiment, but in saying all of that, in working toward achieving this sort of equality, at present, President David Granger and his current cabinet, the new cabinet, especially the senior male members, could be accused of not having enough senior female ministers in the cabinet. How would you defend such critics?
It is true, the numbers don't lie. We have tried to get a mixture of experience and balance. In terms of experience, you know, we came into government and we are faced with some very severe challenges, you know, in the sugar industry, on our borders, in terms of our relations with Suriname and Venezuela. Yeah. And there are some areas which call for experience. And quite frankly, there were not sufficient experienced women in some of those areas. The other thing is that we are a coalition, and I did not interfere with the nominees of coalition partners. So the coalition partners themselves must be prepared to ensure that the nominations are balanced. Okay. If all coalition parties provide balanced lists, well, then we'll have a balanced National Assembly, balanced cabinet.
Okay.
I'm not blaming persons, but the reality on taking office is that we had to make some decisions, and I do not feel there are enough youth, and I do not feel there are enough women. But we tried to create a stratum of ministers within ministries who would help to understudy, who would serve to understudy the seniors, and eventually we'll get the balance right.
Okay, great. Perfect, sir. And now we definitely have to move on to what is making the news, everyone's concern, and it should be our concern, our land, what is ours. Viewers, if you're now tuning in, this is Facing the Nation, coming up a little later on in the program. I'll give you a chance to pose some of your questions to His Excellency President David Granger. But sir, let's talk now. Not only on the 29th of September when you addressed the UN General Assembly, but even before that, you've made several trips in the weeks before that event took place. You keep talking about the Venezuela's claim to Guyana's territory, and of course, it would eventually benefit all of us, all of Guyana. Where does that situation stand at this point in time? What is President David Granger's next move, if you can possibly make it public, regarding this issue?
Okay. We had a meeting with the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, of course at his invitation. And he had with him there Mr. President Maduro of Venezuela. So the meeting was organized on last Sunday evening, and I would think that it went quite well. Mr. Maduro put his case, and I put my case. In the end, Mr. Maduro agreed to return his ambassador to Georgetown. He had withdrawn the ambassador. He agreed to grant agrément to our nominee. He agreed to withdraw the troops. In fact, he had done that prior. The troops who had been deployed on the border in a very aggressive and provocative posture, with rockets and armored patrol vessels and vehicles. And he has also agreed to admit a team of experts sent by the Secretary General of the United Nations to investigate this very matter, to sound out the government. So I would say those four things were agreed by Mr. Maduro. And as a result, we, in a way of putting it, we moved back from the brink. We are now in a better position because we have ambassadors at each other's capitals who could talk and do this paid work.
Would you, at this time, though, even though some progress has been made, you just highlighted the progress made so far, would you at this time want to caution Guyanese not to necessarily get comfortable, because we may tend to think that this situation is quelled a bit? How would you deal with people who want to get very comfortable again?
Well, there's no reason for comfort because on both borders, Suriname and Venezuela, we have had problems for over 50 years. Suriname still maintains its claim to Guyana's New River Triangle on very spurious grounds, and Venezuela still maintains claims to over 2/3 of Guyanese territory. It's like Mexico claiming 25 states of the USA. You know, it's just unacceptable. So, over the last 50 years, we have noted that the Venezuela never resigned from their claim. They always maintained that the Essequibo was theirs, and we said this is unacceptable. The boundary with Venezuela was defined in 1899, 116 years ago. So it's inexplicable that people should still be calling for a revision of the boundary. It's there in law. The maps were drawn, boundary lines were demarcated on the ground, and the whole world accepts, Guyana as a certain shape and a certain size. So there are no grounds for Venezuelan claim that they own 2/3 of Guyana's land. In any event, what many Guyanese may not know is that Venezuela received about 13,000 square kilometers of land in 1899. as part of that tribunal. So, I mean, the argument goes like this. If Venezuela says that the tribunal's award was void, give us back the land. You see? But they wouldn't do that. So I would say that we are on good ground, and there's no danger that the award can possibly go against Guyana.
In saying that we're on good ground, I know you touched on this matter a bit earlier at a press conference you held at the Ministry of the Presidency. Are you confident that our Caribbean counterparts and other countries, other nations of the world would support Guyana where this issue is concerned, and not only support by calling a press conference and saying things, or meeting with President Granger and saying things, but in terms of action, are you confident that they will support Guyana when it comes to action, if need be?
In the international community, states behave in accordance with their national interest. And it may be in the national interest of some persons, some states, particularly small states, to support Guyana. And that has been the line that I took, that if you allow Guyana, a small state, to be dominated, well, then what happens when powerful states are picking off other individual small states? Mm-hmm. So I am completely convinced that we are on good ground, we are on solid ground, and I don't feel that there's any danger that the stance adopted by Guyana would be misinterpreted. People understand us very well.
Many people suspect that at this moment, President David Granger is not only attempting to protect Guyana's sovereignty, if you want to call it that, but he is also on this journey trying to put Guyana back on the map, in a sense, and strengthen us when it comes to negotiating and so on the international scene. Is that what you're doing, sir?
Well, you're quite right. Diplomacy is the first line of defense. We have a tiny army, we have a tiny population, and there's no point pretending that we can go out there and fight any foe. We don't want to fight. We're not a sort of warlike nation. We're not warmongers. Mm-hmm. So the important thing is that we should be able to use our diplomacy, and particularly economic diplomacy, to go out there and win markets, to go out there and convince people, persuade people to support us, but we're not in the business of fighting.
Okay. Finally, on your meeting at the UN General Assembly, you took the time to meet with several other presidents and heads, I should say heads of state, because not everyone is a president. You have vice president. You met with Mr. Raul Castro of Cuba, Mr. Manuel Vincent of Angola. Of course, I don't have the time to call all the other heads of state that you would have met with. Was there a common message after your meeting with all of these various heads of states?
Well, there was a common request, yes, that came from me. That is, Guyana is a small state, and we're asking for your support and protection. We know that we have a population of 750,000. We're not a blustering, boisterous, powerful nation. We're asking for the bigger states to protect the smaller states. Now, when I say that, I look back to the history of the United Nations, because this is the 70th anniversary. The United Nations was established in 1945 with the aim of preserving peace. So what we're asking for is for the United Nations to fulfill its aim, fulfill its mission by preserving peace. We cannot do it alone. There are more small states than big states in this world. Enough. And we cannot pretend that we can go out there and battle against power. We don't want to spend money on rockets and guns and aircraft when we could spend that money to develop our country, to build schools and hospitals. So we feel that our request is reasonable and achievable.
Okay. All right. Now, as we come off of UN and deal with some more matters at home, that is before we open up the phone lines. Viewers, yes, I'm still going to open up the phone lines. I haven't forgotten you, but there are some matters I need the President to address before we move on. Earlier today, Guyana officially embraced and accepted the new ambassador of the United States to Guyana, Mr. Perry Holloway. What is President David Granger expecting from the United States of America as we move forward as a country, and would it be different from what the former administration would have expected?
It would be different because I have a more positive attitude personally, politically, professionally, if you want to call it that too, towards the suppression of transnational crime. There is no doubt that the problems we faced over the last 10 years or so, in terms of money laundering, trafficking in persons, trafficking in illegal narcotics, trafficking in illegal weapons, these crimes have hurt the country. And my concern is that we should bring these transnational crimes to an end. And I'm confident that with the support of the United Kingdom, we can do it, because the United Kingdom 7 years ago did enter into an agreement. In fact, the head of the presidential secretariat signed on the dotted line. But after that, the whole nation knows that Guyana gave up on the security sector reform action plan. So we're going to re-engage. And I'm confident in the view that on this continent, most states want peace. They want to get ahead with their economic development. They're not warmongers. So there's no place for war. And my message to the American ambassador, my message to the Guyanese community, my message to the world community is that let's feed our people. Let's stop fighting one another.
Mm-hmm. And I'm happy you talked about feeding our people. That takes me to your green initiative. And interestingly enough, tomorrow is, for Guyana, it's Plant a Tree Day. Yes, I think it's Plant a Tree Day. In terms of feeding us, how quickly do you see the Go Green Guyana initiative developing? Because as fast as this develops, I am assuming that we'll be able to go back into an era where we can provide and feed our entire, our nation, ourselves.
Well, the green initiative is important for several reasons. Not least of all is the fact that as a Caribbean head of government, I am responsible for what I would call the CAP, the Caribbean Agriculture Policy. But beyond that, it is my view that in the middle term, Guyana's economy can be refloated to be made more buoyant by the adoption of a green agenda, and particularly by the cultivation of more agricultural goods for export. Those are the main reasons, but in addition to that, the country has been badly messed up by the previous administration, largely because the administration then adopted a style of government which shut out local leaders. And that's why we've been so insistent on having local government elections. Their style of leadership, meant that everything must be controlled by the Ministry of Local Government. No, we said not so. We have to allow the various regions to gain their freedom, gain their independence, so to speak, so that they themselves, the regions themselves, will go out and search for markets. They'll go out and search for contracts for road building, for hydropower, airstrips. But the regions have to take part in the burden. Right now, the regions have become addicted to government intervention. So they remain more or less prostrate.
And still depending on the new government.
So we've got to bring that to an end, And we've got to have more businessmen. People coming out of the education system mustn't simply be looking to become policemen or clerks. They must be looking to become businessmen and entrepreneurs.
Okay. Sir, finally, before I open up the phone lines and give the viewers a chance to pose their questions, you talked about education, and I should have asked this in the beginning. It has taken me back, in a sense, to the Venezuela-Guyana border issue. We have had reports that what is happening in Venezuela, the Venezuelan leaders are teaching their students, their children from in school, that, look, Essequibo is ours. Even though you are on a path to ensuring that this matter is settled once and for all, are you concerned that with that sort of teaching coming out from young people in Venezuela, that they may grow and probably cause problems in the future? And at the same time, do you intend to encourage the minister and the Ministry of Education to have something introduced in our school system where our young people can understand that Essequibo really is ours, and this matter was settled years ago.
That is at the heart of the problem. As I said, the battle is not for military conquest. The battle is for the hearts and minds of people. And we want people to understand that the territorial controversy arose out of the greed of Venezuela on the one part and Suriname on the other part. In the case of Venezuela, there was an award. It's legal. The award took away 13,000 square kilometers from Guyana, gave it to Venezuela. What more do they want? They've now produced maps which show huge claim, not only of our territory, but also of our sea space. Similarly, Suriname, there was a problem with demarcating the boundary. Let us say the boundary has three parts. One is the maritime part, second is the terrestrial, if you want to call it that, the river, the Quarantine River, and third is the what is called the New River Triangle itself. In 2000, as you know, Suriname sent patrol boats into our waters and expelled the CGX vessel. We went to court and we won the case. And we'll continue to go to court to win the other cases outstanding against us, because we are very, very clear about the area that was demarcated as the former British Guyana. When we became independent in 1966, this territory became part of Guyana.
Okay. All right.
So there is perhaps, I would admit, a deficiency of education. Many people don't know the details about the territorial controversy. They tend to be very emotional, but there's nothing wrong with being emotional about your own country. But I do believe even if they read the story of those of our borders, they would start to understand that this is not just a farce, it's not pantomime, it's serious. And that we are entitled to our land, but also we're entitled to introduce the type of programs which enable our young people to settle in these areas.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. President. Viewers, it is now your turn. You can call in and pose your questions to the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, His Excellency, Brigadier David Granger. I'm just going to remind you about the rules. Turn the volumes of your television sets down, be as brief as you possibly can, and be respectful. Remember, we have a caller's ID in our studio. So we go with the first caller. Welcome, caller.
Good day to you, and a very good day to His Excellency. Congrats on his accession to office.
Thank you.
I was congratulating him on this speech at the UN. That speech made me proud to be a Guyanese. But my question has to do with the Borbis Bridge.
Okay.
I want to ask the President that we all know the details of the Borbis Bridge and the fiasco, but the agreement that they had shows that a lot of money that was put into the bridge was come from NIS and other sources, but the lesser people that put money, which is the GPC and they put the lesser money, but they have majority of the bridge. And the finance minister announced in the budget the reduction. But however, there is a statement now. I want to ask the President if the government cannot be more forceful in bringing this, because I believe that the bridge people, the bridge ownership, which have some association with the opposition party, is trying to sabotage or to make the government look as though they make a promise and they cannot fulfill it. So if the government cannot be more forceful in dealing with this Borbis Bridge issue, that's my question.
Thank you, sir. I'll take about two others before we get some general statements from the President. Caller, welcome.
Good afternoon, Malika.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Mr. President.
Good afternoon.
I would like the President to put something in place to protect poor people with these car dealers who are ripping off poor people.
Okay. Thank you, caller.
Thank you.
Caller, welcome to you.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. President.
Good afternoon.
I think history will judge you very beautifully with these master strokes that you're using to deal with all these different situations that just keep popping up. I know you didn't really expect all these different things. Now, there's two other points. I would like for you to get the Americans, the FBI, and the Scotland Yard people down here to really do a lot of investigation because people be more comfortable talking to these people. And I think a lot of most stuff would come out if you could get some of those people down here. That's all for now. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Mr. President, a mouthful for you there.
Okay, thank you for those very interesting questions. As far as the Berbice River Bridge is concerned, we are aware that it is the result of what they call now a public-private partnership. We are not in the business of nationalizing private property. We are concerned, however, in the provision of a public service, and we feel that in so doing, we can take any legitimate action to protect private property, but at the same time serve the public interest. This means that when the public understands that funds were actually taken from NIS and NISL, these funds didn't drop from the sky. These are government funds. These are, in the case of NIS, these are funds which are meant to make the national insurance scheme more buoyant. It's meant to be an investment. Similarly, the NISL funds were garnered from state agencies as revenues from some of the productive industries, for example, gold mining and timber. These funds ought to have been returned to something called the Consolidated Fund. They were not. So I would agree with the caller who felt that the Berbice Bridge Company is or ought to be practically in the hands of this biggest shareholder, which is the government of Guyana. So we are working, we are not a brutish administration, we are working to ensure that the bridge company and the government not only see eye to eye, but can provide for a solution which is in the interest of what they call the national interest, which allows young people going to school, those going from West Berbice to East Berbice into New Amsterdam and so on, to make sure that they get a bridge which is reliable but also relatively cheap. So that is one of the reasons why we introduced what is called the water taxis. The important thing is to get children to school. And I think that before the end of this year, this matter will be settled. I would ask the caller not to worry too much about that. As far as forceful behavior is concerned, some things are not wrought by violence. Some things are wrought by diligence and quiet diplomacy.
Okay.
And we prefer to use that way to speak with the Berbice River Bridge Company in order to determine a way forward. So I don't want to anticipate what their course will be, but the solution is not to barge in like a bull in a china shop.
Okay.
That's the first question. The second question is more or less a comment. And the third question is really about investigations. Yes, history will be the judge, but we cannot sit on our hands and allow these criminal activities to be to contaminate the rest of society. So we are trying to isolate the criminals and get on with our work. If they're in the business community, if they are political mavericks or whatever they are, we would like to get on with the business of feeding our people, and we need to rebuild confidence as well by giving them the opportunity to represent their interests, and also if they are charged, if they find themselves in any situation, they will be able to maybe explain their case and implicate the persons who are really responsible for damaging the economy. I don't know if we need to bring foreign investigators. I'm not sure that this caller actually recommended foreign investigators, but what I feel we need is honest and experienced investigators, and we have enough of those in Guyana.
Okay.
I would prefer not to go the foreign way. I would not resist it if some of the big powers ask for it, but I feel we have enough intelligent Guyanese who can undertake these investigations.
Okay, sir. We go back to our phone lines. Caller, welcome.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
I want to say to His Excellency, you will be one of the greatest presidents this country has ever produced. I admire you, and only time will prove that all what you say is right. Regardless what people think or say, you continue to do the good job that you're doing. I know the government is young. I know that there are many questions, and there seem to be more questions than answers. But I really want to encourage you. You guys are doing a good job, and please continue the good job that you're doing. But that's number one. Secondly, I just want to ask a question pertaining to the on the campaign trail. It was a statement that was made in respect to the corruption in the nation with the past governments. I'm not seeing anything basically happening. I'm seeing somebody was on the investigation there and they're back in Parliament. I'm seeing the legal board of them back in Parliament. Everybody's sitting and seeing to see when will these things become a reality, and if it's by chance you have corruption in the judicial system that is covering these individuals, something has to be done. Because we suffered for 23 years. We suffered and went through pain. And we want to see something happening in this nation. But you are doing a good job along with Mr. Nagamutu and your entire team. May God bless you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Caller, good day to you.
Pleasant good day.
Good day to you.
The President. I have a question concerning a question I have to put it into the current honors that is taking place into the some of the things that went down with the previous administration. Now, my question is if the Guyanese will see any justice for the taxpayers' money that was illegally went into the private pockets or private bank account. Because while the other is the Guyanese people, the average Guyanese people see there's evidence around to prove that there was a high level of corruption within the previous administration. But there's a tendency that some of these people will be getting out scot-free. So my question is that if we will ever see any justice for all this corruption that takes place, all these land deals and all these protests and all these various things that were happening, if the Guyanese nation will ever see any justice for that.
All right, caller. Thank you. We'll take one other call before His Excellency's comments. Caller, are you there?
Hi, good afternoon, Your Excellency.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Malika.
Good afternoon, sir.
I have an issue I want to address. Basically, is some of the soldiers who are forced out of the system, requiring they want to come out, because of personal ingratitus by officers and so forth.
That's it, caller?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Mr. President.
Thank you for those three questions, and thanks for the compliment of saying that I'm doing a good job. It's not an individual task. I have a good team, and don't forget that on the 11th of May, over 205,000 people came out to be part of that team, and I feel very pleased, very proud to be able to lead a team of Guyanese who want change. But even inside of Parliament, inside of the cabinet, there are people with whom I work who are committed to bring about change. So it's not a one-man show. We might be doing a good job, but a lot of hands are making this government work. So thanks very much for that. Yes, we spoke about corruption on the campaign. We know that corruption has hurt our country very badly. And now that we're in power, people expect to see that we're taking some action. Yes, we are taking action, but let me say this. We are not a lynch mob. We are not a kangaroo court. We're not going to simply accuse persons and dismiss them. In fact, we've already been accused of witch hunting, but that's not true. what we've been doing, we have been taking our time because you need evidence, you need proof. And sometimes it may seem that a wrong has been done, but when you go to court, prematurely, you may discover that the person that you charge was not culpable. And this happens quite frequently. Don't forget the previous administration was there for 23 years. In some cases, they may even, or crooked people may get some minor official to sign documents. But that person, the real mastermind, what they call the intellectual author, doesn't sign anything. His hands are clean. There's nothing in his bank account. There's nothing he could be charged for. So it takes time. We actually cracked one case, and it was discovered that the person who was the beneficiary did not actually sign a single document. That many of the documents were signed by other persons in the beneficiary's favor. So please be patient. We are not condoning crime, but we have to get evidence. So when we go before the court, there will be prosecution, and we can ensure, as far as it's humanly possible, that there will be no recurrence. So we're looking for convictions, but we're also looking for evidence. As far as the other question is concerned about justice, yes, we don't want people to get off scot-free. This is related to the first questions. We want justice, and they want justice too. People who are accused want us to abide by the law that says that a person is innocent until he's proven guilty. So we can't go around dismissing persons or charging them with crimes or offenses, and when an investigation is done, it is discovered that they might be innocent. So those are some of the answers that I'd like to give you at this point in time. As far as soldiers are concerned, many people work to bring this government in office, and it's not a question of plums. It's not a question of patronage. People still have to work. What we do have, I can assure you, is a more fair and transparent government, and everybody can be rewarded, but as time goes on, as you know, we've already convened one commission of inquiry to investigate the salaries and conditions of service of the public servants. We'll make sure that all sections of society, particularly the government service, would be thoroughly investigated. So if there have to be any changes, those changes will be based on evidence actually produced at the what they call the Lutchman Commission that is taking place right now.
Okay. Viewers, I'm almost out of time, and of course, I don't want to stretch His Excellency too thinly, because his schedule for the day probably will stretch on until probably midnight, when most of us would be sleeping. I see the phone lines are going, but unfortunately, I can't take any more of your calls. You know I'm here every week to facilitate you, even if not with calls every week. And yes, you see, that is the good thing. I'm having the President here now telling you himself that he will be back eventually.
Week, but in future. Yes.
Not next week, eventually. Mr. President, before we have to wrap up, what message would you like to leave with the Guyanese people at this time, whether it be on the Guyana-Venezuela border issue or other matters like crime and security? You just mentioned the public service and so on.
Well, there are lots of messages I would like to leave. First of all, in terms of the Venezuelan controversy, we have been treated very badly by the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela over the last 50 years. They have claimed 2/3 of our land. As I tell people, it's like claiming 25 states of the United States. Mexico claiming 25 of America's 50 states. It just wouldn't happen. They sent a warship into our waters. They drove off petroleum exploration vessels. I can assure you, my fellow countrymen, that the territory is ours. The sea belongs to us. The Venezuelans have no claim. And what I told Mr. Ban Ki-moon, let's go to the court. If Venezuela says it has evidence, let's go to the court. That's my first message, that our territory belongs to us, and I want you to remember the words of that famous song, not a blade of grass, not one cuirass. We are going to fight to protect our land. The second thing, on a more friendly note, if I can call it that, is that tomorrow The 3rd of October, we celebrate National Tree Day. We want to see a green Guyana. No matter where you live, if you live in the savannas, if you live in the city, if you live in the rural areas, plant something. Let Guyana be green again. Clean up your neighborhood. Clean the canals, clean the gutters, clean the trenches, clean your yards, and plant something. If you plant a mango tree, you may not be able to reap the mango, but your children and grandchildren will reap the mango. So plant something tomorrow. One more thing before we go, because time is running out, and that thing is something terrible happened 39 years ago on the 6th of October. You remember? No, many of you don't remember. Many of you are not even 39 years old. But let me tell you this. 11 Guyanese were killed on the 6th of October, 1976. There was something called the Guyana disaster, and some Guyanese, along with people of other nationalities, were traveling to Cuba, and when the plane was off Barbados, there's a huge explosion. In other words, Guyanese were victims of terrorism 39 years ago. And many Guyanese have forgotten, many people around the world have forgotten, but we have not forgotten. And on Tuesday, the 6th of October, we are going to remember the 11 Guyanese who were victims of terrorism. And I ask you to say a little prayer for them and rededicate yourselves to living in a country that is governed by law and is not lawless, is not unruly. Dedicate yourself to ensuring that there will never be a repetition of that Guyana disaster. Dedicate yourself to making sure that our country is built on respect rather than hostility and disrespect. That is the message of the 6th of October. Respect for humans, respect for human life, and respect for the dignity of the individual.
Well said, Mr. President, if I can say so myself. Viewers, President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, His Excellency Brigadier David Granger, thank you very much for returning, sir, and we look forward to future visits to deal with serious matters as they arise. And of course, viewers, I'd like to tune in to join, to encourage you. I think it's the President, the presence of His Excellency that's making me nervous at this time, but that's okay. I know you will forgive me for that. I'd like to at this time invite you to tune in again next week for another program of Facing the Nation. I am Malika Ramsey, as I always urge you, be good Guyanese citizens, take care of yourselves, and take care of each other. Goodbye.